Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin ashrafil anbiya wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First and foremost, I'd like to convey my heartiest congratulations to Dr. Hani and Brother Muhammad Noor for initiating and organizing this first ever virtual Halal conference. And I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be part of this historic event. I'd like to also to thank you audience of this seminar for listening in to my session. Rabbi zidni ilma. This is my favorite dua. Oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. This is dua that I used to recite all the time, especially during my 15 years experience in this halal journey. So, my approach to this presentation is knowledge sharing because I learned a lot from the experts, Sharia, technical, and experienced persons in halal throughout this journey. And therefore, I feel obliged to share this experience and knowledge with you. But for this particular session, I'd like to go back to basic. Reason being, I want to refresh my own memory about halal right from the core. So I would like to share my research in preparation for this presentation, the overview on the concept of halalan toyiban, halal certification, and at the same time, I'd like to share with you the challenges that I have observed throughout this journey. So let's start first with the halalan toyiban concept. Just like kaizen, a non-English word, and this is one of my favorite. Everyone is aware that halal, as written in the Quran, means lawful and permissible, but it is also coined with the word toyiban. This is a word that is always overlooked by everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. Actually, toyiban depicts the aspects of safe, effective, quality, and hygienic. A wholesomeness criteria that Allah has dictated for us to consume. According to the Oxford Dictionary, consume means eat, drink, or ingest. So, how do we abide with the decree of Allah to consume the lawfully wholesome goods? I've learned through Jakim these three concepts of basis in determining halalan toyiban status. First and foremost, what is the subject that needs to be determined of the halal status? What is the source of the subject? And lastly, how is the process of making that particular subject? Let's make a comparison of this concept with the farm to fork concept of a food and beverage product, from its source of origin to when it reaches the consumer. So the question is, are the source of materials halalan toyiban? In the process of making the subject reach the consumer? Is there any risk or halal threats of contamination, cross-contamination, mix up, and even adulteration? So now, let's go through a simple case study. Processed water or bottled water. Does it need to be halal? It is sourced naturally from God's creation. Therefore, it should be halal, right? But is it toyib? Is it safe to be used? Approved by Ministry of Health? Is it legally sourced? Does the producer obtain the approval from the water or local authority to obtain the water from these sources? Does the process contain any element that can create doubt? For example, the activated carbon. It may possibly be sourced from non-halal materials. In the Quran, there are examples that Allah has given us to determine whether such items are halal and tayyib. For example, this ayat, this verse, and this hadith from Rasulullah SAW give you the example about dead animals, blood, swine, and fanged beasts are not permitted to be consumed. So these animals then became the source of our critical concern for halal, because it can be used in the production of food and beverages, such as gelatin, which can be used to provide a clear solution in juices such as apple juice. It can also be used in producing vitamins. Don't you wonder how the oil-based vitamins, A, D, E, K vitamins, which are all oil-based, can be converted into tablets, powdery form into tablets that the children takes, that we take? They need gelatin to bind it and make it into a powdery form. Stearic acid is commonly used in the food additive. They are more abundantly available from animal fat. Glycerin, glycerol, is also can be obtained from plant and animal sources, and they are used as sweetener in the food industry. Enzyme, widely used in cheese production. Where are they sourced from? And now, during this COVID status, alcohol is a great concern because you need to use alcohol in your hand sanitizer. You're encouraged to use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. But is it a halal critical concern? Allah's decree, or Allah prohibits us to consume intoxicant, khamar. So what is alcohol? This diagram depicts clearly to me what's the difference between khamar and alcohol. This has been designed by Prof. Zulkifli Mat Hashim in his presentation to the Fatwa Council of Malaysia in determining the fatwa for alcohol use in F&B and other consumer goods. So this gives rise to the next portion of my presentation, Halal certification. Why do we need Halal certification? Well, we have gone through just now the overview about how we determine halal, how it is traced in the farm to fork concept of food production. We've run through a simple case example of producing the bottled water, and I've shared with you some examples in the Quran and Hadith about prohibited animals. I've shared with you some halal critical concerns and the difference between alcohol and khamar. So this begets the question, who affirms these concerns and make sure that they are properly addressed? Who would you and me as consumer trust to make such affirmation? Would we simply accept a manufacturer's declaration? Or would we prefer a third party assurance, especially if it is a competent and endorsed third party? Because through my experience, I feel that halal certified products would not only benefit Muslim but also everyone, because it also indirectly affirm or verify the following aspect of Toyiban: that safe, effective, quality and hygienic, the wholesomeness aspect of the product that we consume. Now, isn't this a value add to the ISO and GMP certification that any food and beverages company use? Wouldn't this be a Kaizen initiative? That means going for a halal certification is a value add to your existing certification, your next step to improve your company's performance. Okay, let's go back to this ayat. In the Oxford Dictionary, it also defines consume as buying goods or services. And Allah has decreed that we are to consume these lawfully wholesome goods as sustenance, which the Oxford Dictionary defines as to live and stay healthy. This means that halalan toyiban covers not only food and beverages, but everything else. That's why in Malaysia, our Halal Malaysia certification scheme covers a wide range of consumer goods. The Halal certification in Malaysia starts way back in 1974 by the issuance of Halal letter for meat, and later, 20 years later, it produces the Halal cert and logo for food and beverages. Now, it has covered up to medical devices. So going back to this ayat, another aspect that we need to observe is Allah's decree for us to be careful of our duty to Him, which means we need to act with integrity, with professionalism. In one word, it's itqan. So in order to achieve a professionally and a certification that people can see that integrity has been upheld, the Halal Malaysia scheme has standards to be referred to in order to do the certification. These standards can be referred to by both the auditor and the auditee. The first halal standard was developed in year 2000, which is on halal food. Both this halal food and the standard for definition and interpretation of halal terminology are the normative references used in all the other 7 halal standards. This halal standards has been developed by Standards Malaysia, a department under the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, and before any standards are published, it requires a minister's approval as stipulated under the Act of Malaysia. I'm glad to say that Standards Malaysia, Alhamdulillah, is an active member of ISO and SMIC, and therefore the standards are professionally developed according to ISO standards, ISO level standards, which dictates that it should involve all stakeholders, relevant stakeholders to the particular halal segment. It must be professionally developed, consensus-based decision is reached in order to finalize the standard, and it must be relevant. So for Standards Malaysia, our MS, the Malaysian Standards, has recently been revised last year, 2019, and we keep on progressing. Upcoming in the pipeline is the Code of Practice for Halal Professional, inshallah. In addition to the standard, because standards is a brief guideline, a more detailed document was developed by JAKIM. It's called the Manual Procedure for Malaysia Halal Certification. It was first developed in the year 2005, and the current available publication was revised in 2014. The new one, where the public comment was sought last year, is targeted to be published and gazetted to be used, inshallah, by this year. There are also other documents which are key in the halal certification process in Malaysia. They are the fatwa, law and regulations related to the food, beverages, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, etc. Circulars issued by JAKIM, a more detailed one for a specific area of concern, and the most upcoming recent one would be the Malaysia Halal Management System. Another aspect that the Halal Malaysia process of certification looks at is the certification of imported products or imported ingredients. They have come up with a scheme to recognize the foreign halal certification bodies and authorities, and as at this year, February 5th actually, there are 84 certification bodies and authorities from 46 countries which has been included in this list. One more aspect about the Halal Malaysia certification scheme is the concept of halal built-in, not tested for. This is halal right from the start. Halalan Toyiban right from the start, where the Toyib start first with the entity gaining approval and licensing from the relevant authorities. Then only it can start production. Then only it can start its business operation. Then only JAKIM will step in to audit in accordance to its halal certification process. The halal certificate holder must also implement this concept of halal built-in right from the top management, right from the process of R&D down to the workers in the on the production floor, even to the security guard, the cleaners. They must be aware of halal, because halal in the company has to be considered as important. Both JAKIM, the halal certification holder, must work hand in hand professionally to maintain the integrity of the halal certificate that has been issued. Of course, as mentioned earlier, they are the documents that is the key reference to uphold this halal built-in concept, and the certification from the recognized bodies also help to further cement the integrity that halal built in right from the start, and should not be only affirmed by testing the end product. So now let's cover the challenges. The key challenge that I've observed the past 15 years still is happening: the halal awareness by stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders of the halal industry? I've categorized it into three big categories. The first one, of course, first and foremost, it has to be the consumer, because without the demand from the consumer, there won't be halal product. Which comes to the second most important stakeholder, the halal industry itself. There's a third group of people that I group into an important element of the stakeholders. These are the influencers, because they can influence and dictate the whole aspect, the whole spectrum in the halal compliance, the halal observation, the halal integrity within the whole halal spectrum. These are the Islamic scholars that should be guiding the government, that should be regulating and harnessing the halal industry. And of course, not forgetting the academia, scientists and researchers who is very key in supporting this halal industry. However, there are diverged views on the need for halal certification by this group of people. So that's why it's a key challenge to the industry. Next is the varied halal certification methodology. There are differing approaches towards halal compliance. And like mentioned by the Secretary General of SMIC, Mr. Ehsan Overt, it's a challenge to harmonize standards. But SMIC, I respect the effort put in by SMIC to make sure that the harmonizing can happen. I've started to be a part of the technical committee for halal pharmaceutical, had the first so-called introductory session with other members, and everybody has their own views of how the standards should be developed. So it is not easy. That's why is stated as my second challenge. The third one is the knowledgeable and experienced personnel. If more and more companies, be they Muslim companies or the multinational companies or non-Muslim companies, they want to embark into halal, this is a challenge for them because there are not many knowledgeable and experienced personnel available in the market, especially the more technical ones like pharmaceuticals and medical devices and also cosmetics. Perhaps the lack of uh, personnel availability in the market could be also due to resistance to change. It's like a chicken and egg situation. Which one comes first? Demand for a person or demand for the product or the need for the company uh, to go and venture and improve, embark into a Kaizen initiative by pursuing halal certification for their product. All these elements give rise to resistance to change, be it by the top management, what more, the people within the whole organization. Halal compliant and halal certified materials. I've put this last not because of it's not important, it is important, but I put it as my last point here because there's a lot more issues to discuss, especially in this current scenario that's happening in the world. But before we go there, the challenges that I've observed um, throughout my experience in the halal journey is the integrity of the value chain. The value chain from the consumer, starting from the consumer and ending with the consumer. The inbound, the operations, and the outbound, including also the marketing, sales, and aftercare to the consumer. The whole ecosystem of and value chain of the production of the halal uh, uh, goods to the consumer in the end. How do we ensure the integrity is intact? Next is the sustainability of the supply, the sustainability of maintaining the integrity of the value chain. And the next point is the cost. How do we manage the cost in and at the same time ensuring the compliant um, halal materials? These challenges is now further aggravated with the COVID-19 situation. Recent news about meat plant being closed because the meat workers have been tested positive in the US on the one side, and on the other side, the bad news of milk, eggs, vegetables being dumped because of wastages. These products cannot move in the supply chain. But despite this bad news, there's a good news that's happening in Australia. They see that their red meat export remains steady. But then, will it be sustained? Because one of the major action taken in containing the outbreak of COVID-19 is movement restriction. And it depends on how each country are implementing such movement restriction. It will affect the supply chain movement. So now, where do we stand? The effect of the business to the business out of the COVID-19. Um, if I put this global gift supply chart next to the global COVID-19 cases, it's quite alarming to see where the dark colors are. So to me, this calls for a halal risk management strategic planning. In summary, consuming halal is Allah's decree, a commandment by Him that is very beneficial to all of us, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. The authenticity of the halal certification made by a credible halal certifying body gives an assurance for everyone's peace of mind. Unfortunately, resolving and mitigating the challenges has been very, very slow and is now. So we need to have good and strong strategic collaborations because together everyone can achieve more. But most importantly, going back to this ayat, it is our duty. We matter because we are the stakeholders. We can either be in the halal industry that provides the halal products, or we can also be in the influencer that guides, regulate, and harness and support the halal industry. But most of all, we are all consumers that demands for the halal product. And we are here in this value chain. We can, apart from being the consumer, we are either be in the inbound or in the operation or the outbound or even in the marketing, sales and service aftercare to the consumer in this halal value chain. So we need to converge our minds and we must make sure that every single link in this chain that we make is perfectly calculated. Because when we do a job, we are expected to do it perfectly and we have to be good because Allah is watching what we do. Let's move towards itqan for Allah's pleasure. Our work is our ibadah. I welcome your feedback and questions. Please do email me at this address. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.